How
Yes.
about that? How about that? Happy Friday! I'm so glad to see all of your faces, and I'm really excited to see faces that I recognize. Some of y'all I haven't seen in a while. So I want to let you know that can you hear me? Well, there's an echo. Does it? Do y'all hear an echo when I speak?
Yes.
You do?
I don't.
I do not.
It's good
Let's
now.
roll. Let's
It's
roll.
good
Come
now.
on, let's go. Let's go. Technology is not always perfect. Y'all understand that. I am Candice McRae Walsh, and I am the Associate Professor of Teaching in the Department of Public and Nonprofit Administration at the University of Memphis. Please forgive me. I have notes here. I've gotten to that age now where I can't talk as well off of the top of my head. I have to have a few little notes next to me. So please forgive me if it appears that I'm looking away from you. Thank you so much for joining us today for this nonprofit leadership roundtable. This is a Friday, very close to the holiday season. So I know that you all are making time to be with us this afternoon, and I want to say thank you for that. We are thrilled to be able to bring together nonprofit leaders and community partners. Some of our students are joining us, and other colleagues and friends are joining us today for a conversation focused on leadership and sustainability and impact as it relates to the nonprofit sector in Memphis. Again, I want to remind you that this is being brought to you by the Department of Public and Nonprofit Administration at the U of M. So I want to do just a little bit of what I call shameless plugging, because there may be some of you here who have an interest in doing graduate work at the University of Memphis, and our department will be a great place for you to come if you're interested. I want to tell you about the programs that we offer within our department. Our flagship program is the Master of Public Administration program, and we also have a Master of Nonprofit Management program, which is a fully online program that some of you may be interested in. We also offer a number of graduate certificates. We offer a graduate certificate in philanthropy and nonprofit leadership. And we also offer a graduate certificate in local government management. So if you're interested in that, please contact us and we'll be glad to get you information about any of our signature programs. Now, what I want to do is I want to introduce you to our panelists for the afternoon. We have an exciting group of nonprofit professionals who are here to answer questions that you submitted to us, and they are prepared to respond to some of the things that you are interested to know about. So let me tell you who our panelists are. Ladies first, I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Jan Young. And she's there waving her hand. Hi. Dr. Young is the executive director of the Assisi Foundation of Memphis, which has awarded more than $300 million to nonprofits across this community. $300 million, that's a lot of money. She has a very varied background in healthcare, in consulting, and in education. Dr. Young is also a distinguished military veteran. I heard that she got her start with the U.S. Army Nursing Corps Reserves. Wow. And she worked her way up through the ranks within the military system, making her way all the way to being the major general, to be a major general in the Air National Guard. She is now retired. That is Dr. Jan Young. Next, we have Bob Fockler. Bob Fockler is the president of the Community Foundation of Greater Memphis, which is the largest charitable grant maker in the Mid-South. They have over $1 billion in assets. And last year, the Community Foundation awarded more than $150 million in grants to organizations within our community. He has a varied background himself, lots of expertise in financial stewardship and financial management, and he has served in philanthropic leadership roles at the regional and national levels. Finally, last but certainly not least, we have Steve Nash. He is the founder and the executive director of Advance Memphis, which he launched in 1999 to expand economic opportunities for residents who live in the 38126 zip code. Under his leadership, Advance Memphis has grown into a robust workforce and economic development organization. They offer job training, they offer financial literacy, and holistic support to the residents of 38126. We are honored to have these most experienced people with us today. Thank you to our panelists for spending a little time with us and sharing your expertise with all of our participants today. So as I said a little bit ago, we asked you all to send questions to us that you wished to pose to our panelists. And boy, did you guys respond. We got all kinds of questions from all of you. And so what we have done is we have synthesized a lot of those questions to try to boil them down to the top 3 or 4 questions that we are going to pose to our panelists. I'm going to watch the clock very closely to make sure that we don't go over time. What I do hope we're going to be able to do is at the end, maybe open the floor for a few Q&As that we can pose to our panelists. And then we'll be off for our holiday festivities. Everybody can go and get ready for Santa. All right, let's get started. Let's start this conversation right now. I am going to start by asking a question and allowing our panelists to respond. How about this one? Smaller nonprofits often face unique hurdles, and I think you all can all agree to that. In your experience, what challenges come up most often for them? And what approaches help them to build capacity and stay strong? Why don't we start with you, Mr. Nash?
When I read that question, I thought of, at the very beginning, if an opportunity came up, I would go pursue it. And I think that staying focused and saying no would be something that I would tell myself to slow down and really think, is this where I need to be spending time? Because I think there's, there were things that I pursued where I did find opportunities that were a match for our mission, but I also spent time that I would like to have that time back. So I think staying focused and having the courage to say no, and not get wrapped up in FOMO. So I think there's a need for wisdom and courage to say no, and really stay focused on your mission. And there are going to be plenty of opportunities for you that are going to be a fit.
All right, would either of the other panelists like to take a stab at that question?
I'll jump in. I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jan.
No, well, I think Steve hit on clarity of mission And also, not using their boards effectively, not really paying attention to how they're building their board, because the board can be a force multiplier for that executive director, and building a circle of friends. And so looking at individuals who really share their passion. Bob?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what hurdles do they face? One of the biggest hurdles they face is access to funders, and because we tend to know the folks that have been around for a while and that have stronger or more experienced leaders, more robust fundraising mechanisms and that sort of stuff. So access is the biggest thing, and then obviously specific capacity with the ability to operate and also particularly fundraise. When I was thinking about this question, I've heard from a lot of smaller nonprofits, and they complain about access to funders, as if just having a 501c3 kind of entitles them to sustainability. And what I try to tell folks is, you have to invest in fundraising. You can't just have a passion for your mission. You've got to actually invest in what it takes to approach funders. I think it's up to funders to understand that we've got to think about more than just the usual suspects when we go to funding. But agencies themselves have to think about it and actually be more intentional. Well, there are so many nonprofits in town. I can put a period there. There's so many nonprofits in town, yes, and they're motivated by their missions. But again, in order to execute that mission, you got to develop the resources, and that takes an intentional focus on that.
Yes, it
on
does.
Those issues.
Yes, it
I
does.
would like to add, though, even with the access issues, there's certainly a lot of availability, but access is limited even by the IRS standards, because smaller nonprofits don't recognize that if you have a disproportionate share of an investment to their bottom line, it can tip them out of nonprofit status. There's an IRS rule called tipping, and they don't really understand that. But effective storytelling can help them get access. That's why it's so important to leverage their board to tell their story effectively, so that people can see the value in what they do. Because opening up a nonprofit, which might be able to be a for-profit if they really thought about it from a business perspective, doesn't mean that manna from heaven is going to flow just because they're not for profit.
That's true.
Amen, amen, amen.
That's true.
And we have to tell that to so many nonprofits who just think that because you've started a nonprofit that everything's just going to fall into place, and that is not true. It really isn't. And it frustrates people, I think, when they learn that. Did I hear somebody else out there with an amen comment?
Rhonda, yes, amen. Is this being recorded?
It sure is.
Wonderful, because I'd like to share it with my board. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And we would be happy for you to share it with your board.
Yeah.
All right, I've got
Hey,
Candice,
can we ask a follow-up question, or is there another time to do that?
Go ahead.
Hey, Dr. Jan, you mentioned utilizing the board with people who have shared passion. So how do you balance when you're thinking about who to add to the board? How do you balance those with skills versus those who have passion versus those who have funding ability? How do you balance?
Excellent question.
Both. You want both. Because just because they may not have resources today doesn't mean that they don't have someone in their family that's resourced enough to support you, or have someone within their sphere of influence that's better resourced than they are, perhaps. So you need both the skills and people who are within a sphere of influence. Very important to have both. And some people want to have people they serve on their many organizations serve people who are under-resourced or have been in challenged positions. You want to honor their dignity by allowing them to contribute. They might not be able to write a 5 or 6 figure check, but we want to honor their dignity by allowing people to give what they can give. Exactly. And also, sometimes they're your most effective storytellers to inspire other donors.
If I could jump in on that, one thing that I really encourage every nonprofit to do, and I started with the Community Foundation, is be more strategic about what your board needs to look like. Your board needs to have a lot of different skills on it. So think about what you need. You need people that know what your mission is, that will really know about maybe how to operate your mission. You need some fundraising. You might need marketing capacity. You might need somebody that knows something about IT. Think about that beforehand. We put together a matrix of these are the skills we want on our board. This is what we want, how the diversity needs to look like on our board. And then kind of fill in the holes from there. So you can be real strategic about putting together your board and should be.
And after you do that, be sure you have a board orientation so that everybody's singing off the same hymnal. Everybody needs to understand what the organization is doing and can promote that message. And Steve, did I interrupt you?
No, but I was going to say, Bob and Jan, I think that as that matrix of skill sets is identified, it's also then important to look at who is volunteering in the organization and recognizing those folks.
So when you talk, I just put them on hold.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ms. Carson, do I see your hand raised there? Mm-hmm. You have a question? Mm-hmm. Is she? I don't know that she can hear me.
Gail, you're off mute.
We can hear her, but she can't hear you.
She can't hear us. Okay. Well, listen, I've got another question I'm going to throw out. If she's got a question, we can come back to her with her question. But let me give you another question.
Okay, I'll get that and send it to you right away.
Oh, she's having a conversation with someone else.
Hold on, let me write.
There we go. Thank you, Beth. All right, here's another question. Memphis has many nonprofits doing important work, which can sometimes feel competitive. From your vantage point, what helps organizations move towards real collaboration, whether around programs, shared goals, or joint funding opportunities? Let me throw that question to you, Bob Fockler.
Oh, this is a hot question, Candace, because this is something that we deal with a lot. Let me start with saying that we have limited philanthropic resources, so we can't do everything that everybody needs or wants, and that's unfortunate. But at the same time, as I've looked at this, it's not a zero-sum game either. So if somebody's getting funded, it is somehow depriving somebody else. The every man for himself approach to fundraising, I think, is pretty destructive. We really prefer to see folks being more cooperative, collaborative, and certainly open to kind of what other folks are doing in the same field. Mm-hmm. In a proposal, on the one hand, particularly in times like we've had where people have been stressed, and some people are struggling for survival. For a funder, we're still looking at for service and programming. Just a pitch for survival isn't as meaningful as tell me what you're really going to do to further your mission. And I really wish folks would think about that. I was talking about some of these questions with my staff earlier today, and Sutton Mora, who's our chief operating officer and knows as much about this stuff as anybody, said, theoretically, and this is the last thing nonprofits want to hear, theoretically, every nonprofit should try to put itself out of business.
Absolutely.
That's not practical.
And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that.
That's probably not practical, but in a perfect world, you would meet your mission and actually put yourself out of business.
We teach that actually to the students, and it kind of goes over like a lead balloon when you say that.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the work the way that you want to do the work, your objective ought to be that there are no more homeless people or no more hungry people or no more whatever. That ought to be your mission.
I'll drop a quote from my predecessor, Gid Smith, who was my predecessor as president of the Community Foundation. There's a notion that nonprofits want to live and last forever. And his comment was, you can't kill a nonprofit with a stick. They have just this will to exist and survive. You can't kill them.
Bob,
Okay,
I would add to this that I don't subscribe to scarcity. And so this notion of competitive, that's just not how I approach each day. And so an example that I would just point to is Andy Kazee over at the Binghamton Development Corporation. He started approaching Advance 6 years ago with Noah, their executive director at the time, and they wanted to see our social enterprise as far as our warehouse and how we were connecting with business and bringing jobs into the neighborhood that we could use to provide work and move into the marketplace. And I answered questions for 5 years, still answer questions. But then Slingshot also convened, a group of us with social enterprises. So you had CEO, you had the BDC, you had, I'm drawing blank on cutting all the lots. You had ECOP and several of us, and you were trying to, what is the programming? How can we go about funding together and contracts for our social enterprise as far as employment? And, you sit at the table and those things are challenging to get clarity on. And so as we were working, anyways, that did not accelerate to being the source of getting real collaborative work going. But as far as Andy and a trusting relationship and a partner, all of a sudden Andy calls me last month, and he's focused on recycling. Advance is not. And so we know some distinctions as far as what we do and what they do. Mm-hmm. And he connects with a company out of Utah who is connected with Amazon, and it's recycling, goods and services that go back to Amazon. And so the volume of trucks, Andy was in trouble. Andy, to keep the customer, needed a partner that could also take those, containers. And so that has changed our fourth quarter with employment, with revenue. And then, and so I think this is where you never know what's going to happen and where these relationships are going to move. And then Andy knows that we have a staffing service. Well, Economic Opportunities has a staffing service. So I didn't know this, but with his customer, there was an opportunity where they were doing the staffing in a warehouse. And so he contacts, drawing the blank on his name. I can see him, excuse me. But they go over this week and he's got a new staffing customer. And I was like excited for ECOP. I mean, I've got a staffing company, and I just simply said to Andy, hey, that's awesome. If there's opportunity where can't meet the demand, we're ready to participate. So I just let's be for the good of our city, the good of our neighbors, and be open. I just the word competitive. I know it. I know we experience that in the nonprofit sector, but I really think staying focused on your mission and being in the game with everybody is. I would encourage us to operate that way.
I would say that many nonprofits who feel under-resourced are concerned about survival. So, and I'm always saying, if you're more concerned about your survival than the people you're serving, then it's time to really reflect whether you deserve to remain in the space. But more importantly, it's important to have a period of self-reflection and be really honest about, did we really look at the landscape to see who else was doing these types of services? And really be clear about what is the change that we really want to see in our community from whatever role that we're serving, whatever discipline that group that we're targeting. So if we're really honest about that, very few, if any, nonprofit can be all things to all people. So if we're really being honest about the services that we have the capacity to provide, and we have an end in mind for the well-being of those that we're privileged to serve, then we can look at who might have the other parts of the puzzle that must be addressed in order to accomplish the result that we say we want to see in our community. So that would be a strategy in motivating people to work more effectively together.
Oh man, I wish you guys could know. I'm over here wanting to do the hallelujah dance because we preach that so much to folks about the importance of building relationships and talking to each other. Steve, I was listening to you, and what struck me was that it's just talking to each other to find out who's doing what and how are you getting this done and how can we help. Oh my goodness, that is so important. So let me bring a follow-up question here to you. Unless somebody else has a question. Does anybody else have a question that they're wanting to ask? Belinda, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
So my name is Belinda, a graduate student at the University of Memphis. I'm doing public management and policy. So my question is, I think it's more very practical. So there's this nonprofit that probably I'm actually working with them. It's not here in Ghana. And they've done all they could to actually raise funds.
Oh no. Oh no.
She's frozen.
Technology is not cooperating. Because I was looking forward to that question.
I'm just going to chime in to say that we will have a few minutes for live Q&A at the end.
Okay,
we'll try and get through these questions first.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, so there's this nonprofit company that I know. They've done all that they could to actually raise funds, but they still can't get the money. And I want to ask if they should do something differently. They've sold their stories. They've done all they could, probably done everything. So I just want to ask if there's a practical way or there's something they should do different to be able to raise that fund. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, Ghana works very differently than the US, so we would have to understand better what their rules are. But if they could maybe get with an NGO who has been successful, they might be able to figure out what they're doing within their culture and the rules of their country to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
That's good. All right, let me throw another one out at you. We're going to stay with this theme of relationships. Building relationships with public officials can be challenging. How can nonprofits and funders work together to strengthen communication and collaboration with civic leaders in Memphis? Dr. Jan, you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure. Most of them run for election. So
yes,
make sure that we understand what their statement is. And also challenge them. Don't be afraid to ask, what is your position on this particular issue? And, we have to be accountable. If we elect them and put them in office and they didn't care about our issue area, then we did that to ourselves. But part of it is seeking. Now, they don't always respond and they won't always give us a meeting, but it's our responsibility to reach out and to ask for the meetings and to have those conversations and make sure that they're aware. And then when we do have the opportunity to have the conversations, have those conversations from an objective perspective. It's not an emotional thing and it's not just a personal thing. Have the evidence to support it. I realize sometimes even with the best compelling evidence, they ignore it. They don't care, but it's our responsibility to provide it.
Let me ask a follow-up to that. are there ways that are more effective than other ways to even get on somebody's radar screen? I mean, is it, are you doing well if you just show up to somebody's office and say, hi, I'd just like to have 5 minutes of your time to talk about something that's very important to me? Or, is it emailing someone? Is it all of the above? What is really an effective way for these folks to get in contact with their civic leaders? I think some people may be intimidated by the process.
Well, then we're accountable. If we allow ourselves to be intimidated, then we're accountable. So because we live in a relationship-oriented community, perhaps more so than others, finding, who is their campaign manager? Who is a supporter? Who is it that we know? What board member do we know that knows that individual? And so that, it may take an email, it may take a written letter, it may take an invitation to the organization and say, come see what we're doing. They love photo ops. They want to be recognized for something. And so attempting first to understand where they're coming from, and then we can seek to be understood.
All right.
Yeah, I'll chime in.
Okay, Bob. Yeah,
working with public officials is a challenge, but you want something from them, but I think you need to start every conversation with a public official by understanding where they're coming from and what they're trying to achieve. Because they've thought a lot more about what they're trying to achieve than you have about whatever you're pitching them on. So you really need to know where they're coming from and what their resources are, because a lot of times we want to ask people for things that they can't really give us anyway. So you really have to put yourself in their shoes, which is really challenging for a lot of our public officials, because what put them in their position is kind of foreign to a lot of us. So it's hard to understand really where they're coming from, but it's really important.
Yeah, I think I hear you saying, do your research before you get to reaching out to these folks. Yeah.
Steve, and work with their staffers. And work with
yes, they all have staff, even people on the lower levels of service. They've got someone that acts as a gatekeeper. Yes, that's a great idea. Do you have anything on that one, Steve?
We really have not led in that area and pursued those relationships. It is, we have been, when we get invited, we're really arriving and supporting others that have built that relationship. And really with the work that we do, when that bubbles up, we begin to get, recognized, by some of the leaders. So we really have not led in pursuing those relationships. And so, Advance would probably, or at least I would, as the leader, I would drop into needing to grow in this area. And so I do agree with what Jan has said about, my responsibility as far as, who do I vote for and what do they stand for? And this is just not space that I would say, I lead well and engage well. I find myself in these spaces and I'm glad to be there, but I'm more there coming in second, third, and fifth. I'm not, out front leading that.
Okay. Ms. Watson, your hand is up. You have a question? Take yourself off mute and then we can hear you.
I got it. So yes, okay. I do have a question. I've actually taken that nonprofit class that you offer at University of Memphis. So I know everything that you offer online. So I'm like, oh yeah, they're telling the truth. So yes, I've taken it online with Ed to Go. But okay. My question with nonprofits, because I've been on the few boards, is trying to get them, how do you get them to understand the difference between the events and the programs? Because a lot of nonprofits, they'll throw a gazillion events and I'm like, where's your measurable data? Like you have to show these outcomes, you have to show these outputs. And it's like, oh, we just gave 100 people food. And it's so hard here to get them to it's a breakdown with this, especially when they want to ask for funding. It's like, well, we're doing the events, we're taking the pictures, we gave 200 kids toys. Why can't we get funded? So that's my question. Like how to help
Very
them
good.
hear what I'm saying.
Very good question. Very, very good question. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Well, anything that a nonprofit does should be clearly linked to their mission. And they should be able to answer the so what question. Okay, we gave 200 toys, so what? Did you do it of course you wanted the children to have the toys, but what part of your organization's story were you able to tell in the delivery of the toys? What is it that, for what purpose are you really giving the toys in addition to just wanting the children to have toys? If that's what you want to do, that's fine. Put it in your strategic business plan and say, look, this is part of fundraising for us. This is something we want to do. This may be a nice to do. Have them categorized. Is this a must do event? Nice to do event? Is it the right thing to do for our mission? If it's the right thing to do for our mission, that should be job one. The rest of it will fall in place.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I was saying the same thing you just said, Bob. No, I agree with that.
Well, I was going to say that, back in the old days, we thought that just counting beans was enough for reporting on effectiveness. And I was a volunteer for United Way for a lot of years, and a lot of what United Way did was back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, was just counting how many bodies passed through a particular agency and without any other qualitative view. I think that, to Jan's point, I think we really want to see what progress people are making on your mission, and what are you really changing. Sometimes if you're just giving away toys, you're counting something that doesn't really change anything. I will say at the same time, however, that sometimes just counting beans, it can be important in some circumstances. At the beginning of COVID, where we were just trying to feed people, we were just interested in how many meals an agency could get out there. So, and we had to get out past the big agencies to a lot of smaller agencies who were finding pockets of need that weren't being served any other way. So sometimes, and particularly in emergencies, it is enough to just to provide a meal or provide shelter. But usually we really want to see more progress toward a particular stated mission.
Dr. Jan, I really like when you mentioned that so what question. I mention that quite often when I speak to people and when I'm teaching in my classes. And I will tell you, I have insulted a lot of people over the years when I say that, because they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Yeah. When you ask, so what, the question is, if you're doing what you're doing, if it's giving away toys or whatever, the question being asked, so what, that is the question of what difference is that making? What is that doing towards fulfilling your mission? If you don't do it, what bad things will happen? That's the so what question. It's really not something that should offend. It should be something that makes you look at yourself to say, are we really doing what we need to be doing? Are we really doing what needs to be done in order to address whatever issue we're trying to address? And so I'm glad that I got a friend over there that understands what that so what question really means and how important it really is. All right, does anybody else have any questions? Because I got another one I want to throw at you. Wait a minute, my lights are going out in here. Did we pay the bill this month? All right. Here's another question for you all. I think this one might really be something that you, Bob, and Dr. Jan, you all may deal with this a little more. Here it is. When you think about the proposals or the partnership requests that come to you, those that really stand out, what makes them strong? And on the flip side of that, what are some common pitfalls that you see that tend to weaken an application? How about that?
Bob, you want to go first?
Well, we try to fund a lot of collaborative enterprises where different agencies are bringing different things to the table, and you're really looking for something that draws on people's particular strengths. I'll just give an example. Several weeks ago, when the federal government was shut down and SNAP benefits were being cut out, we were talking with the city of Memphis about how do we provide needed access to food for people who relied on SNAP benefits. And we came together, City of Memphis came together with some resources. So that was a strength that they had. The Community Foundation had access to donors. So that's something that we had. But importantly, the United Way of the Mid-South, because their Driving the Dream program had access to, we're already working with families in dire need. They actually had 7,000 or 8,000 families that were already receiving SNAP benefits, and that they could put money in their hands immediately. So by coming together with the City of Memphis, United Way, and the Community Foundation, we all kind of brought something different to the table. United Way was the lead because they were the ones that had access to the people that we were trying to serve. So that's a good template for, you have to build on, the mutual strengths of the people that are coming together in a collaborative proposal.
When we get a proposal, we want to know, is it clear? I mean, can anybody understand it? I even jokingly say, is it something a 7th grader can understand? And give it to your 7th grader, because if it's not clear, they'll tell you in a heartbeat that it's not clear.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it linked to the mission of the organization, if it's a single organization, or if it's a partnership to both organizations? And where is it on their priority? Does the budget match the request, or is it an unrealistic budget for what is being requested overall, whether they're asking us for part of it or all of it? And then, how are they going to know that they actually accomplished what they said they wanted to accomplish? Now, some of the things that we see are pitfalls. And I'm going to just share the most recent experience, since we're in the middle of a grant application process right now where people have submitted applications and we're doing interviews. For anyone who's a nonprofit listening to this, if you're using ChatGPT to create your application, please remember to delete the prompts that ChatGPT gave you to complete your application. And please be able to walk the talk. So it's very nice that ChatGPT wrote a nice application for you, but if you're not able to talk the talk when you're coming in for the interview or when you get the site visit, it really harms your credibility as an organization.
We see that here at the university as well. I'm so glad to hear you say that. Yes.
I agree with that. And ChatGPT is a powerful tool, as AI is in general, but it doesn't replace your mission and what you're trying to do. We were also in the middle of a grant round, and we had, for our responsive grants, trying to help folks that were dealing with revenue setbacks as a result of federal cuts and other things. We received, I think, 140 proposals. Several of the cover letters were identical. And the only thing we could figure is they put the same inputs into ChatGPT and they got the same output out. And at first we thought it was like, we see 2 that are the same, like, wow, people are really thinking the same way. And then you see 4, 5, 6, 7, kind of like, not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but it's you got to use your own voice is part of the answer.
Absolutely. Anybody have any questions on that? I don't see any hands raised. Steve, I want to, I'm going a little bit off the reservation here because I'm very intrigued by the work that Advanced Memphis does. And I am focusing on one of the words that I used when I was doing the introduction to this event, and that word is impact. I think that impact is one of the most important words that we use in the nonprofit space, impact. And to me, that means, how does your work, how is it making a difference? You have focused your work there at Advanced Memphis on the 38126 zip code with different activities and different things that you are offering to these people. How did you know that these were the things that you really needed to focus on in that area? And tell me a little bit about how that has been successful for you. The impact.
Well, yeah. Okay, sure. And, we are faith-based. So right out of the gate, the Lord has told us, get a job and work. And so believe in work and believe that for, our neighbors. And so in serving and working from that foundation in South Memphis, the impact has really come from the trust and the relationships. And once one person in a family begins to go to work, what we have found and where that impact is going both up generationally and down. And so a mother, a grandmother, and then, the children. And so you will see as far as 4 generations that, have gone to work. Now that doesn't happen immediately, but my life begins to look differently. I'm going different places. And then next thing you know, this person is involved. And so on some level at graduation feels like a family reunion. So I think the impact, and I think there's also impact as far as place. Place is really important. And so in staying in a place, you begin to build these relationships and the trust. And if somebody is away because they've been or they're incarcerated, when they get back, the community is saying they're looking for a job, or they're looking for resources, and advances right here. And so I think that the impact has really come through, if you will, penetrating families and the different generations, and then also place is really important, and then our programming also, when you're trying to get to economic stability, it's not just the job. And so this financial literacy and looking at that really becomes important. And so I think the impact has come through place and through working within the family. And then the same thing will happen with the financial literacy. Somebody will start managing their money. Well, it's not that all of a sudden I've gone from, $15 an hour to 30 or 30 to 45. It also has to do with my spending and what's going on. And all of a sudden you have a car. Where'd you get the car? Well, a matched savings account. And so these things are driving, impact within the community. And so that would be some thoughts, Candace.
And Candace, I would say, because of Steve's focus, at least my observation of his focus, his intentionality, his longevity, and his consistency throughout the longevity period has led to him being able to talk about impact. And, I'm saying this for other nonprofits that may be on the call. I know that the Assisi Foundation can be a pain about how we define impact, because there are people who are claiming impact, and we use more of the academic definition of impact. So we know that in order to have impact, there are variables that many of our nonprofits don't control that create long-term impact. We rarely see impact within a 1-year time period unless something miraculous happens. We see a lot of outputs. We see a lot of results. We see limited outcomes, and we don't really see a lot of impact. When someone says they're a poverty-fighting impact organization and they're not paying their own employees a livable wage, it is difficult to say that they're having poverty-fighting impact. So we know that we're a little bit more strict in the use of the language. We also accept accountability for that, because we know that sometimes in order to truly evaluate the effectiveness of programs and the impact that they have, it will cost the organization more than what the program costs are. So I know that as funders, we have failed in our responsibility sometimes to provide the support to help the organizations demonstrate impact. So I just want to put that out there.
Thanks.
That's
I
why university
apologize.
partners are so important, because you can help do the research to demonstrate the impact.
I
Right.
apologize for the
Jan,
leaf blowers being outside my window. So I'm trying to mute myself so that doesn't distract you. Somebody had a question,
I
comment?
was going to say, Jan, that's also where, Slingshot has been, helpful to advance in, there is math, there is, numbers and these things that the Assisi Foundation, the Community Foundation and others ask us. It's important. It's not, it may seem like a pain, but it is valuable, and it has been valuable to advance Memphis. So, I am grateful for that. And, we need to embrace that and be able to answer those questions for sure.
They haven't been blowing the leaves all week, and now they start blowing the leaves when I'm on the Zoom call. How about that? Believe it or not, we're about 8 minutes until we're supposed to end here. So what I want to do is I want to open the floor to folks who may just have questions to throw at our esteemed panel. I see Mr. Calhoun has his hand up, so obviously he has something he wants to ask. Go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Calhoun with STS Enterprise, and I remember I had a question, but I did have a comment to Jan's comment. I remember we met with Assisi, and Jan told Alton and my business, who was my business partner and executive director, how can you guys, continue to do the good work if you're not paying yourself? So going back to the statement that she mentioned about poverty fighting, she challenged us, and that allowed us to begin to pay ourselves. So, Jan, we continuously say thank you for that feedback, and that allowed us to truly begin to operate like a nonprofit that can now build. But one of my questions is, like even you mentioned Slingshot. One thing that we're seeing is, in the process of trying to differentiate ourselves as a nonprofit. Here in Memphis, poverty fighting, that's a big thing. So almost several organizations can fall under that category. But we've been really trying to focus on the workforce development, economic mobility, skill building piece. That those things, they help poverty, but it's more so about the individual. And we thought that those are ways where we can see quicker results and quicker impact, but we're struggling on how to constantly communicate that so we don't, in a sense, get put into a broad box of maybe mentorship or poverty fighting. Like we really want to help students get skills. So any advice on just how do you label yourself, brand yourself as an organization if you're not trying to be in these big buckets that sometimes a lot of groups fall into?
Your mission dictates that.
Say that again. Say that again, Dr. Young.
Your mission dictates what bucket you're in. I think, Steve, were you going to say something?
Yes, I was going to be more specific to getting folks into, the trades or into, some of these opportunities that are, in our city at Moortech and other places. And so for advance, it's really listening. And then when we hear somebody or find out they like to work with their hands or just different things that get said, we're trying to make those connections. And that has not been for us in our context an easy connection. I mean, Mike Shaw comes over from Moortech every time we're teaching a class and talks and presents these opportunities. And the number of our grads that connect to that. It's not a lot, but we continue to sow those seeds, cast the vision, and when we hear them expressing interest, we're going to try and move and connect to the resources in our city as fast and as and get as far down the road as we can. But I think your other comment, Jan, was more structural and on focus, and that's really important.
Yeah, and Steve, like that's like what you just mentioned is kind of what I mean. Like, so when we look at the Memphis landscape, we know that there are several groups already focusing on opportunity use, trades. So our group, we focus primarily on the corporate space, the more professional degree-seeking opportunities to fill the Memphis talent ecosystem. But typically, when we talk about workforce development in Memphis, it's typically trade-based, certificate-based, early career pathway-based, and not necessarily, I won't say not necessarily, but we don't see it as much where it's, hey, I got a student that wants to be an engineer. They're already attending a four-year university, and they're trying to get pathways into professional careers. That's our differentiator. But typically, when we list workforce, we kind of get put into this bucket of, well, hey, let's get them maybe an OSHA certification. And while that's fine, that's not how our mission is defined. So just trying to share the difference that, hey, that space for us is full. Like, there are a lot of players like Advanced Memphis doing great work. This is how we are doing the different with a different population that has a different, sometimes different need.
Yeah.
Well, you're incorporated as a leadership development organization. And if that's your mission, youth leadership development, then you lead with that. The ways that you develop youth leadership, you can list those. And that way that maybe that will help elevate the discussion.
Okay, let me see if I can get a couple of other questions in here before our time runs out. Travis, you got a question?
Yes, this may be for Steve. Steve, you guys have been around a long time, and I think we may be similar where the impact that we are trying to make can take a long time. What is the key to set up the organization to go 20, 25 years to and still thrive even after you're gone?
Well, I think one, if we look at the lens of funding, I think diversity in your funding streams is important. And so when Advance has, an operating budget that's, going to finish this year at $1.5 million, and we've been as much as $2.5 million. When you think of those or that size budget, as far as donations to Advance, as far as $1 million, $500,000, those aren't numbers that Advance has ever experienced. And so, to give you a perspective, this year, the largest donor that we had last year was $90,000. And that donor this year changed strategies and that went to zero. So I think, and I would just share that, our mix is 11% from a fundraiser. Our social enterprise is 26%, grants 31%, and individuals is 32%. So I think that is going to be foundational to really the sustainability. And I think the other part of, as far as you're right, Travis, I've been around just a minute. And so embracing 62 and realizing, I'm not going to be doing this forever is really where that living succession plan and moving from, for myself, what I've really brought to Advance is the entrepreneurship and the casting vision and innovating over and over again. And so I think it's been important for me to make the transition to slow down and pull back and really operationalize and stabilize the organization to where that structure's in place to move forward. So right now, Advance is in a real season of building out that infrastructure to where there are playbooks for the different staff and roles, within the organization. So that's as I look at, advance today and what's ahead for the next 10 years, that's where we're spending time. And I also think we're in a position to where some of the pathways from coming in the door to advance and exiting, we're getting more clarity. And I think that will serve the organization and the neighborhood, for some years beyond my time there.
All right, it looks like we're about at the end of our time together. Beth, are we going to cut off at a certain time here? We're at 1:01. I don't want us to cut out in the middle of a question. Unmute yourself.
You should be good. You should be good.
All right. I tell you what, Ms. Edwards has been waiting very patiently. This will be our last question, and then I will thank you all for coming today. Ms. Edwards, you've been waiting so patiently.
Thank you so much. Patience is one of my strengths. I am Lakeisha Edwards, Executive Director of Urban Art Commission. And as an organization that has a very specific focus on public art, I would just like to have some advice or feedback on how to connect with funders that are encouraging us to broaden our horizons. I would like for us to stay in our lane because we do what we do and we do it well. But other funders are asking, well, what about expanding with music or expanding with these other things? And I do have collaborations, but what would you feel is I guess, a respectful response to say, thanks, but no thanks, I want to stay in my lane?
Bob, I'm gonna let you go first because
I saw it when you said that some funders were suggesting you exit your lane. I saw Jan's eyes get this big. I would always counsel that you need to know who you are, what your mission is, and what you're trying to accomplish. I think that chasing funding is what has killed more agencies that I know of than anything else.
Agreed.
I would say thank you so much for your interest. Here's my mission and here's what I do. And here's the funding that we require in order to do it effectively. And we are so happy to collaborate with that other organization that you mentioned. But, integrity to mission.
And on that note, I'm going to thank all of you all for coming. I'm going to thank you all for your questions. I'm going to thank my amazing panel for providing so much information to all of our folks today. I am wishing each and every one of you a very happy and healthy holiday season. Please, please, please come by and visit with us at the University of Memphis in the Department of Public and Nonprofit Administration. There are good things going on here, and we would love to be able to work with you in some capacity down the road. On behalf of all of my colleagues, Merry Christmas, everybody. Ho, ho, ho. I hope to see you all somewhere, someplace, sometime. Maybe I'll see you tonight at the Grizzly game because I know you're all going, right? Everybody's going to the Grizzlies game tonight, right? Got to go see John Morant tonight. All right. Thanks, you so
everybody.
much. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I feel like singing. That's not appropriate.